Welcome back to another episode of the Goal Line Stand podcast here, coming to you on a Tuesday evening, recapping week 4. Kobe, how you doing, man?
Doing good, brother. We had another great week of college football. Had some exciting games, but also I think we raised a lot more questions than we got answers this week. We got a lot of teams we still have to figure things out on, including your Colorado Buffaloes.
My Colorado Buffaloes, those are your Colorado Buffaloes.
No. I never claimed them. I'm not a buff.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
not
I'm
me.
sure you did. But this has to be the best recap show in a couple of weeks for you because we had the Texas loss. We had whatever the heck it was against South Florida. You got to be feeling a little bit better than we have the past 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, this is as good as I felt about this team probably all season long. I mean, the second half of that game was absolutely awesome. It felt like we were watching Bama football again. We had people all over social media already complaining about how Bama gets all the calls from the refs. That's how you know Bama's doing good. So it felt very, very good to watch them play that kind of football.
And we're going to dig into Alabama, Ole Miss. We're going to hit Oregon, Colorado, Florida State, Clemson. Every game we can think of. And, yes, we didn't forget about the game of the week, Oklahoma State, Iowa State. We're going to get there in a minute. But we're going to start with, what was billed as the game of the weekend, Ohio State, Notre Dame. It was a good game, and it was also I don't know. I felt both offenses were kind of clunky. You obviously had the Notre Dame having 10 players on the field at the end, and then Marcus Freeman saying he didn't want to call a timeout and let Ohio State get set up in something different. So whatever the heck that was. What were your thoughts coming out of this game? Because it's obviously a very good win, but I still have a ton of questions about both of them, to be fair.
Honestly, the biggest testament, I mean, we talked about before the show, the biggest testament to this game is Ohio State's defense, because I thought Notre Dame had a pretty good and pretty fascinating offense to watch. I think they got one of the better running backs in the country. Sam Hartman, you won't find a quarterback with as much experience as him and the production he's had in college. So I think this Notre Dame defense, I think as a team, they have improved from last year to this year. But Ohio State's defense, I think they really showed up and they show out. However, I've come to the conclusion, I don't know if Kyle McCord can be the quarterback for a national championship winning team, especially in Ohio State's position, because you still got to play Penn State, still got to play Michigan. I don't know if Kyle McCord can get you all through all of that and then get you to a national championship.
Yeah, and what do you think about this take right here? Notre Dame really run the ball well in the second half when they were trying to salt that thing away. You know who took a good look at that and was smiling on Saturday? Jim Harbaugh, the team that's been running up and down on them all year or all past couple of years. So, look, that might be just a hot take, but I feel like Ohio State's run defense could be had in some ways. And I think this is a defense that's really taken a lot of steps. Like, I really do think Ohio State's defense is pretty good. That they answered one of my biggest questions coming into the year about them. Unfortunately, the offensive line is not like this offensive line for Ohio State has not played well at all. And look, Notre Dame's defense was impressive. Are their receivers any good? I don't know that Notre Dame has big time level receivers that you need to be a serious playoff contender and to win not just get to the playoff, but they haven't won a playoff game yet. And I don't know. It's going to be an uphill battle now, but I think Notre Dame's receivers, not really a fan. The offensive line, I still think Joe Alt's one of the best left tackles in the country, but I thought it was kind of an underwhelming performance from Hartman as a whole. So some of the fourth down calls, both teams were able to drive on the other and then get inside have some scoring opportunities, and then they would fail on fourth down. Ohio State had one of those, and then the end there, they converted 3rd and 19 to Igbuka and get down to the goal line. Then they get in. Overall, it's okay. Here's another question for you: is this the biggest win of the season? Is this the best win of anybody this season? Because I don't think so.
No, I personally still think that. You said what?
I said I still think Texas beating Alabama is a better win.
I think Texas beating Alabama is a better win, but also I hold that Florida State win over LSU. I still hold that in pretty high regards, especially all the hype and momentum both teams had going into the season, and for that to be the first game Florida State win the way they did. I like that game a little bit more over this. But also, Ohio State was never really an underdog going into this game. Nobody really truly believed that Ohio State was just going to blow out Notre Dame. Nobody believed that. Notre Dame's a good football team, and I think Marcus Freeman is doing a very good job with this team. But Ohio State was supposed to win that game. Was it supposed to be as close as it was? Maybe so. I mean, they're both ranked top 10, but everybody expected Ohio State to win, so I can't say this is a better win than a Bama over at Texas or Florida State over LSU.
The main reason I would hold the Texas win above LSU is probably just because it was not on a neutral field. Not that it wasn't a good win. I would just have, going into Alabama.
Going into Tuscaloosa, that's tough, man.
And that was a rowdy crowd. But can Notre Dame make the playoff if they go 11-1? Because I don't know. This is where not playing in a conference really hurts you because you don't have that extra data point at the end of the year. And I know, people get tired of hearing about that, especially when you get down to playoff talk, data points and all that. But it does make a difference, if you played an extra game, because right now Clemson's not ranked. So that game could not mean as much, especially if they go lose to Miami and they're coming in there with 3 losses already. We'll see if they beat Duke. We'll see if that holds up. Duke could finish 8-4. I don't know. I'm not hating on Duke. It's just we don't know how good they really are yet.
Nah, you're hating on Duke. You've been hating on them before the season started.
They could beat Louisville. Louisville's not ranked. They should be ranked, but they're not ranked. So obviously they got the big game against USC, but unless things go really crazy, I do think Notre Dame's got a big hill to climb. But we'll see.
And it's tough because just to go back to what you said about them making the playoffs. Do you know how many 1-loss teams there could be that are in a conference that could make the playoffs? And then on top of that, 1-loss conference champs. Because you got to think USC and Washington, one of them have to come out with 1 loss. One of them has to. Let's see. We still have Texas. I think Texas, they probably end up going undefeated. But Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan, all of them could be 1 loss. I find it hard for Notre Dame to be a 1-loss playoff team this year.
And again, I don't like making definitive statements, especially in September. That's not what I'm about. Anything like this season could really go off the rails with some upsets or something. So we'll see. Yeah. But for the time being, it's obviously a massive, massive win for Ohio State. I guess. Well, I don't want to throw shade at Maryland because they play them in a couple of weeks. But Ohio State's next big test is against Penn State, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Do we want to talk about the live mass murder on national television? Because
we got to address it. I mean, I've been high on Deion all season. But at the end of the day,
you knew this.
Football, you knew something like this was inevitable.
And
Colorado's good, but they're just not there yet.
And that's not a bad thing.
Because they were supposed to be rebuilding. They won 1 game last year.
You're talking to a guy that took the under on 3.5 wins before the season. I didn't, and somehow their team looks. I'm kind of not surprised. I thought their defense was going to be a hot dumpster fire, and it is. Their offensive line is bad. Look, Travis Hunter, he would have probably made some plays in this game. He does not make that big a difference. This is just the whole thing.
He doesn't diminish a 40-point butt whooping. I don't know.
You might make it a 30-point butt whooping.
Yes,
it's still gonna be a butt.
Instead of getting shut out, you probably could have scored a point.
Yeah, I mean, I can summarize this game simply: they can't block Oregon. Shadur had no time back there. I don't really think this reflects on him badly. They can't block. No. If they face a competent defensive, they are not going to block them. And you know who gets ratted on as a bad defense, but who is actually 5th in pass rush success rate? USC. So have fun this
Interesting.
Week. Yeah, that's the one thing they can do. They can't cover or tackle anybody, but they can rush the passer. So have fun, Colorado. It was a great game from Bo Nix. You could clearly tell this was personal. This was I have no problem with the people that had problems with that do not watch college football.
Yeah.
that speech Dan Lanning's made, you should see how many times it gets made around the country in non-national
Oh
games.
my gosh!
Like,
If the country heard what Kirby Smart has said in a halftime locker room speech, oh my gosh! Come on,
yeah, Nick Saban, all the great,
yes,
it's just part of it. Like look, I still think Colorado's getting to a bowl game. That doesn't change. I still think they'll find ways to beat Arizona State, Stanford, Arizona, but it just shows like that they still got a ways to go. And
a long ways to go.
I like Dion. I think he's going to get it going there, but like this is just.
Yeah.
Does your opinion of Oregon change after this game? Because I still think they're good. Does it?
Yeah.
Because this is the same team that was down double digits to Texas Tech in the second half.
Put it this way, and you asked me this a couple weeks ago, and I gave it a thought, but I never really thought about it until now. What if when someday, which we never see it coming, what if one day Saban retires? You asked me how would I feel about Dan Lanning being a candidate. He showed me everything I needed to see this week to say, yeah, I would take that coach every day and twice on Sunday. I think they are being coached well because we came into this season thinking Oregon wasn't going to be as good as they were last year. I think they are a lot better than they were last year, especially early on in the season. I think Dan Lanning is a true student of the game because he's old school with it. Like even in all his speeches, you love to see that. Like he doesn't sugarcoat anything. He's not worried about getting canceled. He's going to say what needs to be said to win a football game, and that's what he did. I really like the way he's got Oregon running right now.
I do. I'll also just we don't have to get into a whole Alabama head coach. Well, that episode will come. But
yeah,
what's his biggest win? Like last year in some of the big games, they blew a 20-point lead against Oregon State. They lost to Washington, and like I'm not going to hold the Georgia thing against them. Georgia did that just about everybody last year. It just like right now, I think he is a really good coach, but right now he's whooping all the teams he should. And when they run into some of their bigger games, I just need to see.
We say whooping the teams he should. This is only his second year being a head coach. I mean, if you want to compare first seasons, I mean, didn't Kirby Smart lose to freaking Missouri his first season at Georgia?
He lost to Vanderbilt.
I mean, let's give him some time. I granted the big wins aren't there yet, but the way he's setting up this team with the mentality, I think he's showing a lot of potential, and I think he will be one of those next great coaches. He'll be top 5 for the next couple of years.
No, I don't disagree. The way he recruits too, man's a great recruiter. Like, I have nothing but respect for him. That Alabama job is arguably the best in the sport, and it's just you better be right or it's not gonna be good. So I have nothing more on this game.
It was just a good old fashioned butt whooping. I mean,
Oregon's a good team. I still don't know if I'm ready to go playoff contender with them quite yet. And Colorado is a good team that a long way to
go. And honestly, and I'm sorry for even bringing him up again, but his name's Prime Time. All respect to Dion. I mean, the way he carried it with class, like that was a butt whooping. That wasn't a loss in the win column. That was a butt whooping, and he still carried it with class. Like even just him referring back to Dan Landy's comments, like he's still showing it with class. And honestly, me thinking, oh, Prime Time Dion, he's always had something to say. That's just not the response I honestly thought he was going to say after a butt whooping.
That's all you can say. Like, don't make the situation worse. But Dion's not an idiot. Like he's not. So let's get into your game. A game I got to watch all of. I was concerned in the first half. I texted you about Jalen Milroe, and I said, dude, this is when Zamari Walton got that pick of former Yellow Jacket Zamari Walton got that pick in the end zone. I was like, oh God, here we go. And it was a struggle first half. Defense is still the best in the country. I still stand on that.
Really? I don't recall you saying that ever before.
Yeah, I've said it all year. I promise.
You've told me you've been high on this defense. I just don't remember. I thought I would have remembered you saying something like that.
Alabama, Georgia, Penn State. Those are your 3 elite defenses. To me, those 3 stand on an island of their own. And Ohio State is near that group. And I know that some people may not agree with that. I do. I still got to wait to see with Michigan. We'll get to them in a little bit, but just impressive. And this is probably the way it's going to have to look for much of the year. The running game just leaves a little bit to be desired. It's not terrible, but it's just like if Milroe
Jason McClellan had 100 yards on 6.5 per carry.
Yeah, like it's pretty good, but if you face a better front seven and Milroe struggling throwing the ball, like you got to be able to run that running game. I want to be able to trust it a little bit more, but with all the noise this week, like it has to be a good win. I'll let you take it from there, but like it was a good win.
It was a very good win, and especially the way they came out and played in the second half. That felt like Alabama football, especially against a top 15 team in the country, which if you ask Jackson, they shouldn't be ranked after this week anyways. But Ole Miss, they're not bad, but they're not as good as we thought they'd be either. But regardless, this Bama team showed up and showed out in that second half. It's kind of concerning me we're not getting more designed runs with Jalen Milroe. And then also it's even more concerning that he was sacked 4 times. So that offensive line, I just don't think they're capable of doing what Tommy Rees needs to do with Jalen Milroe. But with that being said, all props to Jalen Milroe. It just seems like he's not Bryce Young or Tua. He's not going to go out there and give us 400 passing yards a game. He's just not. But the kid still went 17 for 21. He had 225 passing. He had a pick, but he had 1 touchdown. This wide receiver group, it feels like they're in the same position as Jalen Hurts' wide receiver group when he was at Bama. I think there's speed. I think there's talent. I think there's raw potential there. But you don't have a quarterback like a Mac Jones or a Tua or a Bryce Young that can just air it out and give everybody a piece of the pie. You know what I'm saying?
And wasn't Calvin Ridley on with Jalen Hurts too? Like,
yeah,
you have Calvin Ridley there.
Calvin Ridley was with Jalen Hurts, and he had his best season was with Jake Coker at quarterback. Put it that way. And that was his freshman year. With Jalen, Calvin really wasn't much, but everybody knew his potential. I think that's the kind of guys we have in this wide receiver room. Jermaine Burton has really come on for me. I really like his development. I think he's a lot better than what he was last year. I think he's better than what he was at Georgia. I think he's going to be that guy later on in the season we step up and make clutch plays. But to that defense, I mean, Dallas Turner, freak of nature. Jahad Campbell, freak of nature. Chris Braswell, freak of nature. Like, there's a lot of dudes on this Bama defense that will be playing on Sundays, and I love to see that. And I like to see – it's almost like reminiscent of that 2019 Auburn defense, I just think with better athletes. That 2019 Auburn defense, if y'all don't remember, held Joe Burrow and that LSU team to their lowest amount of points scored. And they almost beat them. I'm pretty sure it was like a 3 or 4 point game that year. But what Kevin Steele's doing with this defense, I think with the athletes we have and the physicality he wants to play with, I think that's a very good combination. So it's going to be interesting to see their defense moving forward throughout the season.
Also, we're not an NFL podcast. I'll just go ahead and say there's not a man on this planet that is happier about what Tua is doing in the NFL right now than this guy right here. Because I have to take some heat here. I used to get after Tua after those first couple seasons, but he's odds-on favorite to win MVP.
Shout out to Tyler Layfield. When he hears this, I need him to know he was wrong. He was Tua's biggest hater for years, and I think it's just because of what Tua did to Georgia in that national championship.
No, it definitely was. Shout out Tyler. All right. This to me was the best game of the day. Like the Ohio State.
This was a fun game to watch.
The finish for that game was crazy. This game was just top to bottom or start to finish just really good. Obviously huge win for Florida State. Like, you know, we if I told you in the preseason that they'd beat LSU and beat Clemson, most everybody would think their path is pretty clear to the playoff. And I think that might be my biggest takeaway is, look, I still have some concerns about Florida State through this season. Like, I still like my preseason thoughts of them being a playoff caliber team and not national title good. I still think, or I still believe in that. Like, their secondary has not played well this year. I know LSU they stumbled a little bit in the second half, but even then, like LSU hit some plays in the first half. Boston College, who is horrendous, tore them up in that game, and it could have just been a look-ahead spot, but Clemson, whose passing attack has not been very good, they got after him a little bit. Now, it wasn't as much down the field, but I still don't know about FSU's ability to cover. Look, Clemson was driving 24-17 when the scoop and score happened. That completely changed the game. There was also some missed field goals. You got to give Jordan Travis credit. He played an excellent second half after being a little shaky. I think he's banged up, by the way. Like, I don't think he's 100%. They got a bye week this week. They basically have 2 bye weeks because they play Virginia Tech after their actual bye week. So there's 2 bye weeks ahead for you right there. So, look, I still have some concerns about the defense, but this offense is still really good. Keon Coleman, that ridiculous touchdown catch, like that was insane. Also, and I hate picking on a team that won a big game like this. Florida State had 20 yards rushing. They're running attack like trade, but they can't get it going. And you saw in that first game against LSU, they couldn't block Mekhi Wingo. Not many people can, but you get to the playoff, you're gonna have to play somebody with a nasty defensive line. That could be a real problem. So I still think I have concerns about Florida State in the long run. They're still the team to beat in the ACC. And to me, after Georgia, they have the second clearest path to the playoff.
Yeah. I think that biggest thing that concerned me about this game was Florida State only having 22 rushing yards on the game. You can't win a national championship doing that. And let's give credit where credit is due. I mean, Clemson's defense is still Clemson's defense. Like, they have a very good defense, at least a very good front seven. But they also got some key guys in that back end. I like being able to see Cade Klubnik kind of get into more of a rhythm, I guess to say. They were moving the ball up and down the field. They had a lot of first downs throughout the game. But I still feel like, and I think it's not Cade's fault. I think Dabo has to go a different direction with his offensive identity because, honestly, if you stuck DJ in this game, I think he had the same – if not similar stats to Cade. Like, I just don't see this offensive scheme being good for Clemson moving forward, especially if they're not going to dip into the transfer portal and go get any elite receivers. But with that being said, they still ran the ball really well. I just think Florida State's defense isn't as good as I wanted it to be because I thought they had some key guys on that defense, but I just don't think it's where it needs to be to win a national championship. But with that being said, it's Clemson. Kudos to Florida State. That's a big win, especially in clutch time.
Yep. And now, there's still some big games for Florida State. Like, we'll see how, they do play Duke. It's in Tallahassee. They do got to play Miami. And they do have to play Florida. Jury still.
Hey, I ain't gonna lie to you. Tyler Van Dyke against that Florida State defense kind of scares me.
Right. That's what I'm saying. And Miami's defensive line's not shabby either. Like, I still would pick Florida State. It's in Tallahassee, but ask me November 11th. Well, I think that could be a very interesting game, but we'll get there. But look, what do you think about Clemson the rest of the way? Like, do you see them not losing a game the rest of the way?
Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame is a very good football team. If I had to pick right now, I'd pick Notre Dame to win that game. But with that being said, I think they beat everybody else on their schedule. Depends on what Miami does. Miami's just kind of up in the air right now. I don't know if I should buy into the hype just yet or if they just had a good couple of weeks. I don't know yet. So Miami's a one to watch. But outside of Miami and Notre Dame and obviously, Georgia Tech, I see them having a pretty easy path the rest of the way. I don't think South Carolina is going to give them much trouble, which we said that last year. North Carolina, I don't think their defense. I don't think their defense is going to stop Clemson's offense, especially if they play the way they played against Florida State. But I don't really think differently of Clemson. I just think the philosophy there by Dabo is going to have to change if they really want to make some serious.
That was the last thing I wanted to ask about this game. Do you think this is what says, all right, we got to do a little something in the transfer portal? Do you think Dabo makes any philosophy changes to how he runs things a little bit at Clemson after this?
Yeah, I mean, after this season, After this season, I think he's going to have to. He's trying to stick to his bread and butter, and I just don't think the way the game is evolving and the way the NCAA is working with NIL and transfer portal, he's going to have to start taking advantage of it because that's all the game is steered by right now.
Somebody's going to get in his ear. I think when you win 2 national titles and have the run of success, you can run things the way you want to as long as you keep winning.
As long as you got a 5-star quarterback.
Yeah. When it starts becoming apparent that people are taking advantage of something and you're not, and you're getting left behind, like it's okay. Like you got to step in and do something. I think somebody will. I would be surprised if they don't. You don't when we say this, you don't have to go take 20 transfers. You know, you can still recruit and develop much like Georgia does. But what does Georgia do when they have a deficiency? They go get Dominic Lovett. They go get Ra Thomas. They go get some guys. They got Darion Kendrick a couple of years ago from, ironically, Clemson. Like, when they have needs, all you got to do is get a couple players here and there where you find your shortcomings. Bama does it too when they have needs. Like, elite programs still take transfers. Like, they're gonna have to fix that. And I think 9-3. I think they lose one more game this year. I don't know who to, but it could be Miami, it could be Notre Dame, could be North Carolina. I don't know, but I think they drop another game. All right.
Now, let me ask you this real quick, just to end this. If they lose multiple games throughout the rest of the season, what do you think happens with that?
What do you mean?
Like, is that going to hurt Dabo being at Clemson?
No.
You don't think so?
He has such a long leash there. Because I think about even the years we thought they've struggled, or we know they've struggled, they're winning the ACC. Like, they won the ACC and won 11 games last year. It's not like Dabo's all of a sudden started to go 7-5. I just think that this is a wake up call. Like, okay, like, this is alarming. Like, this is because they still look slow at some positions. Like, receiver and corner, they just look slow to me. Their front seven is still really good. Their offensive line is okay. Will Shipley's a very good player, and I thought Cade Klubnik played a pretty good game. It wasn't an elite game, but I thought he played pretty well. But no, I'm not ready to go there yet. It would take an absolute, like, Clemson. You would have to see Clemson quit, like, because of how things are going before something like that ever entered my mind. But all right, it's time to open the floor. It's time to go conference by conference. We're gonna start with the SEC this week. We've saved the SEC for last. Is there anywhere specific you want to start? LSU. Let's talk LSU, Arkansas.
Yep.
LSU's defense, not good. This is not good. If you're watching on YouTube, I just put my thumb down. So it's not good.
Yeah.
Arkansas struggled with Kent State. They lost to BYU, and I really thought they were going to beat LSU. Like, LSU's offense, like, Jaden Daniels played a really good game. They scored on their final 6 drives. Malik Neighbors, he continues to be one of the best receivers. And I think he's the third lead. I looked at the stats. He's the third leading receiver in the country right now.
Yeah.
After what he's had, he is finally, after all the drops he had in the FSU game.
After he listened to the pod and listened to him call him overrated.
He heard the overrated chants.
Yeah.
And look, I'm anxious to see how if Ole Miss is truly a fraud, they'll look bad against LSU secondary. They won't be able to. But if they can't do that on LSU secondary, then Lane Kiffin is overrated. I'm already trending there anyway. But any other thoughts on that game, Mike?
I mean, that defense. I mean, they're going to have to really step up. Now, LSU's offense really did impress me. They were able to run the ball pretty well. Jaden Daniels, he balled out. That wide receiver room, they're living up to the expectations you put on them early in the season. I think LSU's offense and Alabama's defense, that's going to be a very exciting matchup to watch later in the season. But with that being said, Arkansas is not that good of a team. They're not 31 points worth of being a good team, especially against LSU. And LSU has the more talented roster. On paper, this should have been a blowout, but they kept it a close game. I don't know if it was just the SEC thing. I don't know if it's just because every given Saturday type deal. But LSU, if they're going to really try to play their cards right and go get after it and get after that SEC West title, their defense is going to have to be playing a lot better.
Yeah. And I still think they have room to improve and a ceiling to hit. I'm not ready to bury them yet, but there are some clear glaring issues there.
Yeah.
You want to speak about glaring issues on defense in the SEC? South Carolina. Mississippi State has been a doormat on offense all year long. And listen to this. they ranked 91st% with a 13% explosive play rate. That's one of the tops in the country from this past week. Mississippi State can't do that. Like they have been one of the most least explosive offenses all year long. They were able to do what they wanted to against South Carolina's defense.
Yeah.
South Carolina won, but that was just I was taken aback by how well Mississippi State played on offense.
I mean, yeah, but we knew South Carolina wasn't that good of a team. But what we've been saying all year is Spencer Rattler will take that team as far as they can go. And he had an excellent game. He went 18 for 20, had 288 yards and 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. They ran the ball pretty decently. And then also Leggett, their wide receiver, had 190 yards. I mean, the kid is a
very good player.
Stud. He is a stud. But with that being said, we've been saying all year long, South Carolina just doesn't have the talent everywhere else to be a dominant team in the SEC East. So I think with Spencer Rattler's performance and the fact we know what South Carolina is and we know what they aren't. This win doesn't scare me. I think it's just a hard fought game for South Carolina.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of LSU and Arkansas. LSU should have blown them out. Nobody's sitting there saying South Carolina should be blowing out anybody, even a team like Mississippi State.
Just going through the rest of the conference here. Any thoughts on Georgia, or is it still sleepwalking?
They're on cruise control. I mean, even more so than Michigan. They don't have to ruffle up their feathers at all. They can just go in there, win every game, throw their backups in, and still win by 20, 30, 40 points.
All right. Name me the better offense, Auburn or Iowa? Auburn played 3 quarterbacks and totaled 57 passing yards.
I would still say Auburn. I mean, Iowa's – come on, man.
I know we're not picking between 2 elite offense. Like, man, but here's the thing is and maybe it's just Tyler Van Dyke and that Miami offense are a lot better than any of us thought. A&M's secondary has been lit up this year.
Yeah.
I thought Hugh Freeze might scheme something open because I do still hold him in high regards as a play caller. My God, it was ugly.
But also, Auburn doesn't have elite talent in their passing game.
I still think their defense is pretty good for what it's worth.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, but also when offense isn't giving you much, I mean, games like that are bound to happen.
Yeah, I thought maybe Cal could just play really good defense because they have done that through the years. And then I saw Michael Penix hang 45 on them in the first half yesterday, Saturday night. So,
well, let me ask you this, and we've watched 4 games into the year so far. Who is Georgia's biggest threat in the SEC East right now?
Oh, God.
Because I saw an interesting take. I saw an interesting take. They said Graham Mertz is the biggest threat to Georgia's season right now.
That was my thought. I think it's Missouri. And I cannot believe that is coming out of my mouth at all. I still just think, Florida is not playing bad. And, I guess we can talk about them a little bit here. Again, they screwed around a little bit on Saturday. They should be they did not play well. And playing their style of play, I think Eli Drinkwitz is a good offensive coach. I don't know that Brady Cook is that great of a quarterback. They also have Luther Burden, who is one of the best receivers in the country. I don't think Florida has the weapons, and I don't think Graham Mertz is a good enough quarterback to beat a team like Georgia. I think Florida, if they can beat teams of similar talent, or Georgia is just vastly better than Florida on every front. You're not dragging Georgia down in the mud because they'll get down in the mud and beat your face in. You're not playing that kind of game with them. Missouri, I feel, could scheme some things up, and we've seen Missouri played them good last year. I honestly think Missouri's defense is better than Florida's. Florida's defense isn't bad. I think Missouri's is a legitimately good defense. At the end of the day, I don't think anybody is a legitimate competition. We can talk till our faces blue about it. It's just not a good division.
So have we totally discounted Tennessee and
no further notice? Yes. You want to talk about a fraud? You can say they're 4-0 or whatever. Kentucky is not a good team.
That's what I was thinking. I wanted to get your take about
Devin Leary has been terrible through this year. Their offense is a disaster. Their defense is okay. Vanderbilt hung 28 on them.
Yeah, they did.
I don't mean to be the box score scout here because I didn't get eyes on that game. But I've watched them a little bit this year. Their offense is a train wreck. It's bad. Yeah. I think Florida. I don't know how they're. Florida, I think, upsets them this weekend because Kentucky's favored in that game. So I don't have any other thoughts on the SEC. Do you?
Nah, let's keep it pushing.
Pac-12. All right, where
From the worst conference to the best conference, baby.
Yes, sir. The most mid conference, the one that's exciting. Where do you want to start? Let's start with Washington State.
We got to talk about Michael Penix. This brother is a stud, dude.
I told you last week.
You did.
As of right now, this might not be true in 3 weeks. It might not be true in November. I think Washington is playing the best football of anybody right now. Do I still have concerns about them? Are they perfect? Absolutely not. Is their offense terrifying? Yes. Their offense is. You have a Michael Penix, who I think is an NFL prospect. I don't think he's a first-round prospect, but he's an NFL player. All three of those wide receivers are NFL receivers. I'll tell you that right now. Like, their offense is just freaky. Like, they were up 14-0, and Michael Penix hadn't even stepped on the field yet. They had a pick six, or it may have been a scoop and score, and then they had a punt return, and then you let him get cooking. They were up 45-12 on Cal at halftime. You can say it's Cal. That's impressive. Like that.
Let me ask you this. This is a two-part question.
Mm-hmm.
Is Washington beating Texas that they play on a neutral field right now?
Yes, they did last year. I know it's last year, but like I think there was something to that game. Like they kind of whooped Texas up front too.
Is Washington beating Ohio State right now?
Yes. I'll still stand by myself. I would pick Washington against any team in the country as of right now. If they played right now, I would pick Washington over anybody. Again, if I see Georgia turn it on and actually start playing like they're supposed to, I could totally change that opinion. Like if they lined up tomorrow, I truly would pick Washington against anybody, and I could look like a fool for saying that. But they've dominated everybody they've played from start to finish in just about every aspect of the game. Like there has been no doubt about who's been the better team in that game, and they play Arizona this weekend. I know that's not Arizona's 3-1, but they're not great. They have a bye week, and then they get in a cage match with Oregon, and then we shall see if Oregon is a true contender. If I'm overrating Washington, I'm very much looking forward to that game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Washington, they're at least top 3 in the country. Like, not even just in terms of wins. I think just the fashion that they're winning games. I mean, it's hard to think of
this. If I was like an AP voter, I wouldn't have them there because I think they would beat Florida State if they played tomorrow. Florida State's got two better.
Florida State has the better wins.
I can't put them above Florida State. Texas, I think they'd beat Texas. Texas has a better win. We can save it for the big.
That Ohio State win over Notre Dame is better than what Washington has right now, as far as best wins.
But we're big on power ratings and beating on a neutral field. I think Washington, if they lined up against anybody on a neutral field, they'd beat them right now. Maybe not in a couple months. Maybe Oregon exposes them. Maybe USC exposes them. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm not mad at that. I can get behind that.
Yeah. Welcome to the wagon.
What happened to your Beavers though?
Okay, well, the defense to me, it's
Cam Ward played
enough respect to Cam Ward.
Yeah,
it could fade. He should be thrown in the Heisman conversation. It might not last but a couple weeks, but I'm mentioning him up there right now. Like I think it's a Michael Penix, Caleb Williams against everybody else right now. But Cam Ward has been playing. He had 400 plus against what I think is a good defense. Like I don't think Oregon State's a bad defense. And look, Oregon State almost come back. They were kind of ineffective running the ball a lot of that game, which is their bread and butter. That's not how you don't want to get. Oregon State can't play from 3 touchdowns down. That's not what they need to be doing.
And meanwhile, DJ looked very reminiscent of Clemson DJ, and that kind of scares me.
He got better later in the game when they started coming back, but through a lot of that game, it was not great. And shout out, that I hate what's happening to him. Both of these programs, and clearly Jake Dickert does. Like he's talked about it every press conference he's had. I don't know. Like they've beaten Wisconsin, they've beaten Oregon State. Like they've had a couple of impressive wins early in the year. I don't think they're getting talked about nearly enough.
Who you talking about? You cut out
Washington State. They're not getting talked about nearly enough. Like just they've beaten Wisconsin, they've beaten Oregon State. I just think like I think people look I think people just look at the brand and don't associate. I think there's too much of that going on. That's a good football team.
Yeah, they're good. And I knew that they would be pretty decent because I was very high on Wisconsin going into the season, and they absolutely beat Wisconsin like with no doubt about it. And then this win over Oregon State, which we both thought going into the year Oregon State would be a sleeper team in the Pac-12.
They still could be.
I
Just one loss.
and they still could be. I'm just very concerned about DJ. I need him to be consistently good.
You know who is? We've talked about Washington. Colorado has been getting all the love in the world. We've talked Oregon. We've talked USC. You know who we don't talk about nearly enough? The team that's won the dang conference 2 years in a row.
Please say Utah.
Yes, the team that's won the conference 2 years in a row. Look, it is not pretty what they do at any stretch of imagination.
But they win football games, baby.
Yes, and they probably have the best defense in the Pac-12. That's not a surprise either. Their defense is very good. Yeah. To me, I'm still – if they want to win the conference again, they're going to have to get Cam Rising back healthy. Like, they can't do this whatever they got going on right now on offense against anybody, because when you do play USC later in the season, and I'm pretty sure they play Washington. Maybe they don't, but I'll have to check on that. Yeah. But even if there's still other good teams. Like, they play Oregon State this Friday. They're underdogs. Kyle Whittingham loves it, man. Like, that. This is it. They've beaten an SEC team. They've beaten, I don't know if Baylor's a good win. They've beaten UCLA. Nobody's talking about them. Everybody's talking about Washington, Colorado, and USC, and that's the way they like it. So they're winning.
Utah is a good football team, and we've both been high on them going into this year. They're just a solid, well-built program. But I got a padlock stat for you. If you would have told me that Utah won this game, even though UCLA had 2 more plays, but Utah had the ball for a total of 9 more minutes, that's just pure insanity to me. Like, I don't know how they do it, but they win games. I mean, they don't have the greatest passing attack right now. Cam Rising is still hurt, but they're running the ball, running out the clock, and their defense is playing dominant. You don't want to play Utah. Like, you just don't want to play them if you're a Pac-12 team with playoff hopes right now.
No. Anything else from the Pac-12 this week? I feel like we covered it. Also, Arizona, what are you doing? Like, they about effed around and found out with Stanford. But yeah, that's all I have for the Pac-12. I guess let's go to the Big 12, and got to start with the front runner here. Look, it's in the past, Texas has screwed around in these kind of games. They come out, they laid the hammer to Baylor. Look, Baylor is not very good. It's worth mentioning Texas coming out handling their business.
Yeah, I mean, I liked what I saw from that defense, but also I just don't think Baylor is as good, because you were a little bit higher on Baylor than I was, but I just don't think Baylor's – yeah, Baylor's just not that good of a football team to me, and I think Texas won this game kind of just nonchalantly. Like, it was 38-6, but there wasn't really any big stats. I mean, Quinn Ewers had 1 touchdown. They ran the ball pretty well, and they're receiving – you didn't really see flashes from Xavier Worthy. Jonte Cook had a big catch, but quiet game from A.D. Mitchell. They kind of won that game just lackadaisically, but they still won 38-6. Like, it's crazy.
We talked about it last week. Everybody was watching these big games. There was one game me and you had our eye on, and it was the Cyclones and the Cowboys. And guess what? Matt Campbell is merged as the winner. Iowa State, they're a train right now. You can't stop them.
Iowa State scored over 30 points. Who would have thought? Yeah.
They scored 7 against Ohio, and then they come light Oklahoma State up. So there's your state of affairs in Stillwater right now. So, yeah, that's not a good situation for.
Nah, we talked about it a little bit before the show. This just seems like
this seems like a topic that I don't know if we have time to discuss in full length tonight. Is Oklahoma good? Or are they good and benefiting from a very bad schedule?
They're in that same boat as Miami to me right now. It's just kind of up in the air. We don't know if they're like really good yet, or if they're just kind of like, the schedule.
To me, though, I at least think Texas A&M is decent. Like, who is Oklahoma beating?
That's
SMU. Is there like? And I'm not being disrespectful, but come on now.
Yeah. But
their
also, it's
defense,
good. It's good when you have a coach like Brent Venables and your team is only giving up 6 points. I mean, you like
like
to
their
see that.
defense, I actually do think has been impressive. But like, me and you've said it for a while now. Like the best quarterback on that team's not playing right now.
Yeah, I agree.
But they have a chance to prove themselves in a couple weeks when they play Texas. But
Yeah.
I'm still very skeptical of Oklahoma. Look, Jayhawks wagon, they're a wagon. You can't like that. The 38-27 over BYU. They have the biggest game of the year against Texas, and I'll just say that would be funny if they won that game. Like
That would cause absolute chaos. I mean, not for us, because
Oh no,
Jayhawk.
no, we love it.
Any day the Jayhawks win is a good day. I mean,
We
that's
get
just how
close to
we
that
feel.
playoff game.
Yep.
Texas Tech.
Oh God.
Okay. I hate talking about the losing team and making it all about them. Me and you, or me and
No,
you both.
I was higher on Texas Tech than you were. I will give you that.
No. I was gonna say we both thought Neil Brown was just doomed this year at West Virginia. Look, I don't know if he's gonna make it long term there. He's 3-1, and his only loss is to Penn State. Like, they don't win pretty, but they know exactly who they are. Their offensive line and running game is actually not half bad, and their defense is not great, but their secondary especially. But Texas Tech couldn't expose it, so they get TCU this weekend. And just mentioning TCU real quick, I think they've recovered fairly nicely since losing that game to Colorado. They've won 3 in a row. SMU is a decent group of 5 team. They handled them pretty well.
Yeah.
Houston won. I mean, congrats. They beat Sam Houston. I'm still convinced they were the worst team in the Big 12 right now. Yeah. Kansas State, they bounced back. I know John Reese Plumlee didn't play, but that backup for UCF played very well, actually.
Yeah, he didn't play bad, and I was just looking at that, actually. I thought that was a very interesting game. He had 264 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. I mean, he played well.
I still think Kansas State's a top 4 team in the Big 12.
Oh, definitely. I agree
okay, true or false? This is to end the Big 12 right here. Top 4 teams are Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Kansas State. Or would you put somebody else there?
No, I'd have to agree. I don't think TCU's in that conversation. Baylor's definitely not. Iowa State, I don't think they're in that conversation. Yeah, I think you got it right.
Yeah, the Big 12 it's just not. It's not been the best of years for them, especially back in. But let's go to the Big 10, and I guess you want to start with Penn State, Iowa, or you want to go Michigan?
I think we need to talk Penn State, Iowa, because that was embarrassing, big dog. That wasn't it.
And that's for Iowa standards. Like I had no delusion that they were going to win this game because truthfully, Iowa shouldn't have been ranked. They were not the 24th best team in the country. My fear going into this was their defense has not actually played all that well this year. Like for Iowa standards anyway, like they're typically a very good defense, and that saved them in years past. It didn't. It's not this year. If their defense is not like top of the country level good, they can't win football games against.
No, not at all. And how many passing yards did they have in this game?
40-something, I think.
And
I know they were down some
56.
guys. Yeah, I just don't know what to say about Brian Ferentz and all that at this point. Like it's they were down some key weapons. But you can't tell me if they'd have come in, they'd have suddenly had 500 yards against Penn State. And also we can talk about how bad their defense or offense is. Credit to Manny Diaz and that defense too. Any elite defense, that's what you should be doing against offenses like that, and they did. Like they're so fast on every level of their defense. Like they really do look like a quote unquote SEC defense running around out there.
Yeah, and I mean, technically they had Iowa ranked at 24. Do you think this is a game whenever they're selecting the 4 playoff teams? Do you think they look back on this as a game that helps Penn State's strength of schedule?
I don't know, because here's the thing is I was going to bring up the Big Ten West. Who's been impressive in that? Like Wisconsin, kind of. Like they bounced back last week against Purdue's been terrible. Yeah. Also, we're on Big Ten West. Shout out Northwestern overcoming a 21-point deficit to beat Minnesota. Yeah. I don't know what that was about. Minnesota, what on earth, man? Like you have both of those teams who I still don't think are any good. Nebraska stinks.
The Minnesota Falcons, man.
Yeah, Illinois, they've not been great so far this year. Like they're 2-2. Like the thing is, Iowa could still be 9-3 and win that division like that.
Yep.
And so it could be now. I think it needs to be put into context, but it could still be looked as a ranked win, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, and I mean, same thing. We talk about Michigan and Rutgers. I mean,
we talk. Why is Michigan ranked second? Why should they be ranked second right now?
I mean,
do I still think they're really good on paper? Yeah, they've done nothing against arguably the worst schedule of anybody in the top 10.
Well, I think they're right there in the same boat as Georgia. They've played the same caliber of teams. They're not playing very good teams. I mean, Georgia's already played UT Martin, UAB, and Ball State, and Michigan is steamrolling teams like Rutgers. I think they're in the same boat. I don't think neither one of them have played at a number 1 or number 2 like caliber yet, but on paper, out of respect for who their coaches are, how they've been coached up, and not that previous year's success matters, you know what these teams' identities are. They're going to be really
Georgia
good.
pass because they've won 2 national titles. I just don't do it the same with teams that haven't done that necessarily. So personally, they look like they're just on cruise control in every game, and they probably will be this weekend against Nebraska. But they've not come out and dominated it at all, and I would rank them in the back half of the top 10 right now.
And even last year when we were doubting their strength of schedule, they were still hanging 40, 50 points up on teams that just had no business being there.
Like they were winning at a convincing. If you're going to play that kind of schedule, you need to go out and dominate it and not mess around. Why should they be ranked above Florida State? Florida State has massive wins over Texas, beat Bama.
They shouldn't be ranked over Washington. I know that much.
There's no way. If you want to rank them above USC, that's fine. USC hasn't exactly played anybody either, but
Texas for that matter. Texas has a way better win than I think they've played a fairly harder schedule.
Yep. Before we go to the ACC, you got any deep thoughts about Indiana going to 4 overtimes with Akron?
Not at all. I mean, that's just Indiana. They're just not good, dude.
I couldn't believe it when I was going through the scoreboard looking at games. I'm like, that is not happening.
I mean, they went to 4 overtimes and neither team broke 30 points. That should let you know everything you need to know.
All right. It's time to wrap this show up with a little ACC talk. We hit Clemson, Florida State. You know who went on the road and won a game by 2 touchdowns this week? The Yellow Jackets did. Georgia Tech. They went on the road, beat Wake Forest. They were 2-2 now. They're going to be 3-2 after beating Bowling Green.
Yep.
Shout out them. They played well this weekend.
Well, I love what Haynes King is doing. I think he's worked himself. Honestly, if we're looking at this objectively, Haynes King is a top 3, if not top 1 quarterback in the ACC right now.
He's played as good as any. He's the second leading passer. He's took care of the ball. He did have an interception this past weekend. He did force one. But he's played as good as any. He's been a revelation for this program right now. It's been great to see.
And y'all were able to run the ball really well.
Yeah, they got better towards the end. The second half really picked up for a little bit there. It did, but the offense is clicking right now, and the defense, which has been much maligned this year, 8 sacks, forced 5 turnovers.
Yep,
pretty good.
That was my biggest rag on them the last couple of weeks. Is just that defense has to step it up, and they definitely did that. They listened to the pod.
I don't think NC State's good, by the way.
No, not at all.
I'm fully and that's one of my concerns about Notre Dame. We kind of lauded them for taking it to NC State. They should have lost to Virginia that.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's one team I'm kind of regretting backing right now.
Yeah, Brendan Armstrong is not impressive to me at all.
Louisville hung 56 on Boston College. Jack Plummer nearly 400 yards, 5 touchdowns. We've said watch out for Louisville that.
If their schedule plays out the way I think it will, they're going to be.
They still got
actually. They won't even be a dark horse in the ACC. They will be one of the front runners.
They have the 4th best odds to win the conference right now.
Yeah,
some of that is definitely their schedule, but they don't play Florida State, Clemson, or Carolina, but they do play Duke. They do play Miami, so we'll see. They go to NC State, coincidentally enough, this Friday. So we'll see. They got to take care of business there, but. Miami dominated Temple. Do with that what you will.
Do we need to talk about Virginia Tech losing to Marshall?
I was about to get there. Is Brent Prom hot seat? I know it's just year 2, but To me, this is bad when you win 3 games in year one and you look worse the next
Yeah.
year. Like you got to look a little better.
It's almost like the entire Brian Harsin situation. It just like year one wasn't good, and year two looks no better at all.
But at least Brent Price seemed like a fit at Virginia Tech. Like that at least seemed like Brian Harsin was never a fit at Auburn. But man, and I've never been a Virginia Tech fan. I at least liked it when they were good. Like that, it's nice to see them good. That stadium filled up, and it fills up anyway because their fans are really good. But understand, man, everything they're bad. Also, you know who else is still bad? Pitt. Ugh. Oh, that's the goal line stand game of the week this week. Aside from Texas, Kansas, Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech this Saturday. Who you got?
I'm gonna take the lesser of two evils. Give me Pittsburgh. I think.
Yeah,
Pittsburgh.
Pat Narduzzi. I still think is a good coach. I just don't know what is going on there completely right now. But
yeah. Also, and I know you weren't high on them to begin the season, and you thought they were a little bit overrated. Duke is playing good football.
They're playing excellent football.
They're playing really good football.
They're a top 4 team in the ACC right now.
Yep. They're playing really good. I'm very interested to see how they finish the back half of the season.
They got Notre Dame Saturday. We'll see. College game day in Durham for the first time ever. Anything else before we get out of here, or did we hit on everything? You made sure to get Virginia Tech in there, so I know you're good to go now.
Oh, yeah, we're good to go. It was a very exciting way, especially seeing that Yellow Jackets game. I like what Georgia Tech is doing. I definitely think they're on the come up. Who knows? If they finish out the season strong, I think they could end up finishing in the top 5 or 6 of the ACC this year.
Yeah, they're playing well right now. I want to see how they do. They'll beat Bowling Green this week, and then you got another measuring stick game against Miami down in Miami, which I'll be there. So we will get back to you next week. Of course, if you are watching this on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell for whenever we put new content out because we know you want to do it. If you're listening on podcast form, leave us a review. We would appreciate 5 stars, but if we're talking about Kansas too much and you think we need a 1 star, it happens. So, but we appreciate all the listeners out there. But we're going to be done for today. See you next week. I'm Jackson Caudill. That's Kobe Reed. Go